I had my little outburst in there. As far as you know.
Let's call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Going to, unless somebody tells me different, we're going to start with the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right. Dutchess County BOCES presentation. This is where we get the yelling.
They sent me, yeah. Well, thank you again very much. Again, my name is Mike Scarrett. I'm the Assistant School Business Official at Dutchess County BOCES. Dr. DeLucia, our new district superintendent, sends her regrets that she couldn't be here tonight, like I said earlier, but I know some of you were in the room. We're actually triple booked tonight, and she was kind enough to let me pick first, and I picked her. This was the first one I actually ever presented, so thank you very much. And Elliot, thank you very much for putting that up on the screen. So certainly we know how valuable your time is. It's a very busy time of the year for you, although I was thinking there's probably never a slow time in the school district, but I know how busy it is around budget time. So I'm going to try to be relatively brief tonight. We just thank you for the opportunity to come here. Anytime you get a chance to come and speak to our school districts, we appreciate it. So I thank our President Hartswick and the rest of the Board of Trustees, as well as Superintendent Hernandez Fidala for allowing us to be here tonight. So I always start, and I know we're getting the presentation up on the screen, but I do like to always start with trustees. Ralph Chimenko is our board president. Kelly Stanford is our vice president. We have Karen Burka and Karen Smythe as trustees, and Mike Rio and Mike McFarland as our trustees. We're typically a 7-member board. We're typically a 7-member board, so we do have one open seat. We actually will have elections on April 22nd for a member to fill the one term that will run for the rest of the school year and next, and 2 open seats that will run for 3-year terms starting in July. From a BOCES perspective, I like to start with a budget timeline. Our budget process is different than school districts. We spend time in November and December really trying to create rates that we think are going to ultimately cover our costs. And we have to make a lot of assumptions when we do that. We understand that from a BOCES perspective, you guys can't build your budgets unless you know roughly what our costs are going to be and what our pricing structure is going to look like. So in January, we send out an initial service request along with our rates. We provide a form where we ask the districts to do the best they can to try to provide to us what you think you're going to need for next year. And I say do the best you can because BOCES is always changing, right? We try to be a good partner. So we try to allow you to come into services and get out of services as the needs of your district dictate. But we have to have a starting point to help us staff and to take out the vendor contracts that are ultimately going to meet your needs. So I asked for those forms back by April 4th. There's some wiggle room there. Elliot does a great job. He gets back on time every year. But I spend the next month or so working with the districts to make sure I truly understand exactly what you need, and then we can go out and enter into those agreements that we need to meet your needs for the fall. On the 22nd, the district will vote on our administrative and capital budgets, and that's really where I'm going to spend my time today. The vast majority of what BOCES does is programs and services that you can pay for and come into as your needs dictate. The one budget that you vote on that's fixed, relatively fixed, is our administrative budget, as well as a capital allocation. So that's what I really want to talk about tonight. If there's any questions about anything else, I'm happy to try to answer that, but that's where I'm going to focus my attention. And then at our June board meeting, we asked our board to approve our overall budget that, again, was built based on your needs. The second they approve it, it's outdated because districts are coming in and out of services throughout the course of the year. And we hope that they grow, they typically do, but that has to be our starting. our key budget assumptions. So we have to make some assumptions, just like you guys. We typically try to assume flat enrollments. Our enrollments have been increasing in both our CTI, our Career Technical Institute, as well as our special education and alternative education services. But we try to start with kind of flat enrollments, and any growth that we have, we hope can come back to you guys in the form of surplus that typically happens. And I've got a sheet later in the presentation about that. We have to assume health insurance. So we assumed a 7% health insurance increase this year. The Dutchess Educational Health Insurance Consortium actually passed a 6% premium rate increase, but we get a handful of new retirees every year. So we actually added a percent to that to account for those additional retirees that we expect to have. Really, really important from a BOCES perspective. I know we've come here each of the last handful of years, so you probably have heard this before, but it's really important. Health insurance in any school district or BOCES is important. It's a big, big cost, right? But in a BOCES, it's particularly important because no matter where the person worked at BOCES, if they're eligible for health insurance and retirement, as soon as they retire, by law, that has to shift into our administrative budget. So roughly 3/4 of our administrative budget is health insurance for our retirees. So any percentage increase in our health insurance that we pay to DHIC impacts the charge that we have to pass on to the district substantially. So we always have to keep our finger on that. We try to bring in and we try to drive services to our non-component districts, so districts in other counties. Because if we do that, we can charge an administrative fee. We can bring that into our administrative budget and lower your overall contributions. So to the extent that we can provide those services, it's generally a benefit to you. We want to increase our focus on our facilities and our maintenance. The tax cap era was kind of tough on the BOCES, right? We tried to really partner with the districts and keep the rates as low as possible, but that didn't leave a lot of funding to do the kind of upgrades that you would need to keep up, you know, at a facilities level. So we're trying to continually increase the focus on making these spaces the type of spaces that you'd be proud to send your students and staff to. And then obviously safety and security is paramount. Now we know what's going on in the world. BOCES, you know, we generally accept some higher needs students. We need to have security and safety measures that you feel comfortable sending your students to our BOCES. From an administrative budget perspective, we try to put these into kind of the big buckets. The first bucket at the very top there is the non-retiree administrative expenses. Actually a decrease year over year of just about 2%. We've had a couple of new hires that took a buyout, right? So we budgeted for some health insurance, they took a buyout. It's really that tight that actually can drive a budget decrease. Health insurance increase there. I mentioned the 7% increase. When you put the two together, again, because the retirees, though 3/4 roughly of the budget, it drives a weighted average there of 4.54% on the overall budget. Once we've got the kind of budget side set, we then have to look at the revenue side. So like a school district, you guys have a tax levy that you're able to levy on your taxpayers. You get some state aid. We don't have either one of those. The lion's share of our charges come from school districts, right? You contribute into our administrative budget. Very small, relatively small amount of other revenue. Typically that's interest income. You know what interest rates have done in the last year and a half or so. We're kind of expecting that to come down as we move forward into next year. And we had some money that we actually returned to the school district for some retiree health insurance that we returned last year. Not having that cash on hand, we expect to reduce our other income. So we see a reduction in other revenues. While the total revenue is 4.5%, the share that needs to be borne by the components is just under 8%. Higher than we would want, but it's kind of the way the math works out for us. Once we've kind of identified what our pot of money is, the allocation methodology that we're required to use by New York State is your RWADA. So for those again that have heard BOCES speak before, you may have heard this term before. You probably hear it about once a year or so, but it's resident weighted average daily attendance. It's essentially your enrollment, your student enrollment, with some weighting for secondary age students. So students from grade 7 to 12 get a weighting factor of 1.25. So if you look at that number and say, that's not the enrollment number that I recognize, it's accurate. There's some weighting in there, but that's a number that you report that SED does the factoring on and produces for us. It's a very non-arbitrary way to take the overall pot of money and spread it among the component school districts. Your overall share of the pie went down a little bit year over year because your RWADA went down a little bit. So it's one of the few times you actually don't mind seeing your enrollment / RWADA go down. You pay a slightly smaller percentage of the pie. So your increase year over year, about $6,600 on our administrative. Second piece that's an allocation to you is our capital and rental funding. So we had a large capital project that we did a couple of years ago. We thank you very much for your support of that. It allowed us to build a beautiful new alternative high school and to make some upgrades in our K-8 special education building. Each year we ask for a contribution from the school districts just to do the general maintenance stuff, the windows, the doors. If we ever have a roof leak, we could do that type of stuff. $1 million doesn't go as far as it did even a couple of years ago. But we do transfer, and we ask the districts to contribute into a pot of money that we transfer into our capital fund, allows us to make those improvements. And we don't always spend it all in 1 year. We may collect a year or two's worth of money, so we could do something more substantial. There's that transfer, and then we pay about $60,000 a year for in-district rentals. Quite honestly, BOCES is out of space. We would offer more programming if we had more space. So if you have any space available, reach out to us because we'd love to talk to you. But we do rent classrooms and other spaces in our districts, and we offer programming. So maybe you have some students that you can't get all the way to BOCES or you think would be better in a traditional school setting and you like that model better. That's the rentals, the rental cost that we pay, we put into this fund. So actually, it's a decrease of $5,000 year over year.
Thank you.
So, yeah, based on your budget, based on your Awada, it actually saved $679. And if I'm moving too quickly, slow me down. But again, I know you got a very busy agenda. I generally like to show the surplus and the state aid that you get from BOCES. So last year, you spent just under $3 million with our BOCES. The aid comes back the year after you've spent the money or after we've expended the funds. So your surplus on those monies that you spent last year, our revenues over our expenditures for the programs that you were in was about $400,000. And then you got aid in addition to that money that you got back of about $675,000. So you got back just under $1.1 million on the $3 million that you spent. That doesn't include special education services that get aided directly to you. I don't have visibility to that. So your overall percentage of money coming back from services that you bought from BOCES is higher than the 36.2% that you have there. We never want to sell our services based on the aid component to it. We want to be competitive with private entities, but the reality is you do get needed. You do get BOCES aid back on it. It's what the state does to incent sharing, essentially. Your student counts, I always feel like it's kind of nice to see, how many students do you have in our BOCES? So you have 5 in our alternative high school program, and you have 1 in our K-8 Salt Point Center special education program. And then you've got 26 students as of a couple of weeks ago in our Career Technical Institute. So really a program that's growing. We think it's great for the students to have those opportunities to go out and take an alternate path. I try to list the kind of bigger programs that you participated here. I need to read them to you, but you got automotive, computer trades, graphic arts and designs, animals and plant sciences, cosmos, security and law, small engine electrical trades, and then construction trades. And then you got 6 in singletons kind of in 6 other programs. We've got an eye chart if I could list it out there, but so I hope that you continue to use our CTI and our special ed programs. This is the slide that Dr. DeLucia covered, really our future goals and focus areas, kind of a slimmed down version of our board goals for next year. But our first bullet there is kind of our mantra, right? We want to continue to be in. They want to partner with the school districts. The reality is they're your buildings, they're your students. We're just here to try to provide those services that you need to keep your students at the best that you can ultimately receive from BOCES. We want to have safe and welcoming school culture. Who doesn't? We want to utilize our space to the utmost, and we would like to grow a program. We just right now we're having a hard time finding space to put it. We want to effectively communicate and collaborate with key stakeholders. That's your superintendent groups, your business official groups, your personnel, your pupil personnel liaisons, your facilities team. Create those connections. We kind of want to be the hub and allow folks to come learn from each other and ultimately get better. Planning for multi-year investment in state-of-the-art facilities is always going to be a little bit tough at the BOCES because we need to return all funds to you guys at the end of every year. So for us to be able to plan, our only real opportunity is that capital contribution that you make. We can collect that and keep that. $1 million a year doesn't go real far, but we do want to have a plan. We don't want to just fix as things happen. We want to try to have a plan to the greatest extent possible. And then we want to build those community partnerships. We want to give your students, your staff opportunities to get out into the communities. We have partnerships with Board and Dutchess Community College and on semiconductors through our P-Tech program. So we want to continue to grow that. It doesn't need to just happen between the walls of the BOCES. We want to open up those partnerships. Like I talked really quickly, but maybe that's exactly what you wanted. If you have any questions?
And
I
Mike,
put Matt's name on here, but you can ask me too.
Mike, the I don't know what you want to call it, the motion that's being pushed to sort of remove the cap from CTI salaries, has that been folded into this, or
It hasn't yet.
do
Yes.
you have any idea like how much that would affect us?
What the issue is there is that there's a cap on, I think this is what you're talking about. There's a cap on BOCES aid only up to the first $35,000 of salary, right? Pretty low number when you're talking about teachers and administrators and all the folks that are typically delivering those types of services. That one's been on the docket for as long as I've been in BOCES, and that's coming up on 20 years. The reality is if we increase that, it increases the aid that they're gonna have to pay, it increases the overall state budget. So they're likely would have to take that from somewhere else. So there's been a lot of push for that. I don't know that it's gotten a lot of grassroots momentum yet. We hope it does, because I think that will incent districts to buy the BOCES services because you'll get more aid back on it. But I haven't heard that one's close to being passed. I hope it does.
For the first time in probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, it seems like, I mean, if we want to have top quality instructors at TCI, you talking about new technologies, we can't have them capped at $35,000 or $40,000 a year. So I just was curious if you guys had taken a look at how big of an impact would that be?
Yeah, I think it would be huge for you guys. Again, ultimately, that would drive more aid back to your programs. You're purchasing more of our services because you're getting more aid on it. It should allow us to obviously improve our facilities, improve our technologies, improve our learning systems, all those kinds of good things.
Any other questions?
Well, again, I really appreciate it. Anytime we get a chance to talk about BOCES, we're really happy to do it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming out.
Hopefully I'm back in less than 3 years. We only won a couple more basketball championships by then.
There you
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to change the agenda. To add our folks from the Model UN. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any questions? Or we'll wait for them.
Yeah,
All in-
so
All in favor? Any
Aye.
against?
so I will introduce our two advisors. We have Dr. Betts, and Ms. Herzegovich, who, they are teachers in our high school. And they are the advisors for the Model United Nations Club. And so they traveled to the city recently and they had a whole entire experience. We've heard about these in the past. And so we asked that club members who wanted to be recognized tonight, that they were able to come. I think we were expecting a third, but I guess unable to make
The
it.
track meet kind of ending a little bit, it's just sort of right up against it. We have like, I would say half of our club close to is in the track.
Yeah, that's complicated. I think the timing is not easy. But we do have Kimora and Ava who are here. Yep, and participated in the Model UN trip and the whole experience. Kimora, you were here with us last year talking about it, right?
Correct.
Yes, so you're familiar. But I will let Dr. Betts and Ms. Herzegovich go through their introduction sort of the whole process and then anything that the two young ladies here would like to share as well.
Sure. I stand or sit?
You can do whatever you'd like.
Well, thank you for
having us, for me to do since everyone else is. When you motion to change the agenda and vote and first and second, you are speaking our language, the Model United Nations Club, because all of our meetings and all of our conference and every committee meeting that they're in follows very strict Model UN procedures that sound very similar to the Board Mtg meetings. So my ears perked up. But we have our club this year was actually very large. We had over 30 members of the club, but we took 24 students on our trip, which was in March. It's a 4-day, 3-night trip to Midtown Manhattan. And it was the 51st meeting of the National High School Model United Nations International Conference in New York City. And so we found out that there were about almost 4,000 students in the hotel in Midtown with us for those 4 days, and you can feel it when you're there. I will let them speak about the trip itself, but just give a little bit, really briefly. We start meeting in September. We meet weekly. We come together and we try over the course of the year to sort of learn the procedures, understand what it takes to give a good speech in front of a large audience, and how to write working and research papers within our club. And then we send off to the organization our list of countries that we would like to represent at the conference. And this year, Finland was on our list, and we were assigned to represent the country of Finland. From there, we take all the information we can from the United Nations, the real United Nations, and research, and the students come ready to present on the topics that they research throughout the year. So it's a long process, and it's kind of in stages, but running, weekly from September. Do you want to talk a little bit about meeting the Finland person, and then they can talk about
This was so exciting. So I got in touch with the UN person for Finland, and we couldn't go down there. Sometimes we could, depending upon the year, we couldn't do it this year, so we had a Zoom meeting with them. It was amazing because you're speaking with this person who is so in everything that we researched and learned about, and it really was so kind of him. He spent an hour talking to us, and Mr. Seif came up, and they had incredible questions that he was like, oh my God.
Literally
That really was. So it was really inspiring. And I have to say, just going on the trip, this was my first year on the trip. It was so inspiring to see the most elite students from around the world, absolutely around the world. And our students were there with them. It was awe-inspiring to sit there and watch, and you were like, oh my God, they spoke so well. You got your thoughts together quickly. Even people who are new at it, you learned, you watch people do things. So I was so proud. So I'll let you.
Ava, you start. Why don't you start? Give a quick little bit, and then we can wrap up with her experience.
Yeah, my name is Ava Ramgahan. I'm a new member of Model UN here at Millbrook High School, and I am a new student to Millbrook High School as well, as I've transferred recently. My experience was truly invigorating. Being able to transcend and learn amongst like-minded intellects was most valuable. And I find that this Model United Nations trip really allocates time to one's persistence, one's deep thought, their inspiration. This was truly such a wonderful thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Absolutely. Thank you.
You great.
No, I'll stand. I like to stand like
Yeah.
talking.
We remember.
I know. So again, for people who don't remember me, my name's Kimura. I've been doing Model UN for, I think,
This is your 4th year, right?
This is my 4th year, so I've been doing this for a long time. I'm old now. So next year I'll be coming my senior year for 5 years for Model UN. And for this year, this was our country, Finland, compared to last year being Italy and Poland. And to reiterate again, there's different committees within your country that you could choose from. The one I did was CMS with my partner Addie, my partner in crime. She's not here, so we're just gonna pretend that she's here. And that was the conservation of migratory species. And the topic that we chose in my committee was called the preventing the illegal exploitation of African elephants. And we were able to talk to countries from all different parts of the world, some that were directly influenced by the illegal exploitation of African elephants, such as Zimbabwe, and countries that weren't, such as Finland. And we were able to work on our debating skills, our diplomacy skills, and be able to lay the foundation for everyday life skills that you won't necessarily see in Model UN. And this year, I think this was my second year, I won an award with my partner in crime, Addie. And honestly, I don't think I would be able to do it without her. So I would say thank you for everything and all the support that you've done. And hopefully in the future, we can maybe have a middle school Model UN, because for NISMN, that's just one conference. So when people say like, oh, I've been doing Model UN for like, say 2 years now, that doesn't mean that they haven't been doing Model UN related conferences. So like there were like freshmen that were like 15 years old. And I'm like, oh, this is your first NISMN? Like, oh, you must be really new to this. No, they have like 5 conferences underneath their belt. And I'm like, okay. And cause like they could do local conferences, like the ones at like Vassar College. The Model UN NISMN one is the one, the international one. So there's like over 4,000 people. So besides winning an award, Addie and I, we were able to talk about our committee on over 2,000, was it almost 4,000 people? And it was absolutely a liberating experience. And to have the foundation, because of the support of our advisors, to kind of work up to that slowly but surely is absolutely amazing. And I want to say thank you for having me here, and my partner Addie. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We were so proud. I'm blown away. So thank you for that.
So what's next?
I'm gonna take all the awards. I don't care if I can only win one. No one's gonna do this. And hopefully we'll get a really cool speaker, because we've been robbed every year for having the best speaker. Not saying I loved my speaker there, but for this past year, I think I have the photos, because there's 2 sessions. We were session 1 and there's session 2. It's the week right after we finish. And for their closing ceremony, I think it was Joe Biden that was there.
Literally in person.
In person, asking questions.
Our person was like, we didn't know who they were.
We didn't know. And like, regardless of what side you are politically, to have the former president there and to ask him questions, because you're allowed to come up there and ask questions. Yes, you have to, fight tooth and nail to get a spot, but like, it is truly an amazing experience. And I recommend anybody, not just necessarily the students, but just to be there in that atmosphere is, wonderful.
But first of all, you guys make us so proud. I mean, just to know, tiny little Millbrook takes, and stand up with anybody, is amazing. And like I said, you guys make us so proud. What are you gonna do? Are you a senior?
No, unfortunately, I'm a junior.
But do you have any plans?
Oh, yes. So I would like to double major. I would like to go to the US Naval Academy in Maryland. I'd like to go into the US Navy, fingers crossed. And I would like to do a double major, one in chemistry, specifically cosmetic chemistry, and then the other one is being poli-sci. So, yeah, my Model UN is gonna hopefully come in handy. And plus they have a college Model UN, besides of you coming back when you graduated high school, to come here and like kind of facilitate the Model UN, like in New York City or in Chicago or Guadalupe. They have it all over the world, not necessarily just New York City, but this is the biggest one that they have in the world.
Very cool. And how about you? What do you plan to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an avid learner of the Russian language. I'd like to pursue a Russian linguistics minor and a major, hopefully, in nuclear physics, as well as the subatomic particle degree of the application. And likewise,
Very cool.
You have everything. You have some time. You're nervous, wrong.
yeah, you're very excited about this. Yeah.
What year are you?
I'm a sophomore,
You're
but no,
sophomore,
I
okay.
graduate next year.
Oh.
Very good.
Good luck on
Nate
your
Stafford is
future.
actually gonna be coming back.
Yeah.
As the people who are helping out at the whole event, they come from colleges all around the world. And Nate Stafford, who's a senior, he's graduating, he's gonna come. Because he applied for it, so it's nice to see that the people wanna come back. I mean, you do get a free trip back to
Oh,
Manhattan. but-
everything is paid for. I
It's
think
a
the
lot of
only
work.
thing, yeah, because you have to write the whole topic background, which is, at least I think mine was like 50 pages, and that was just topic A. And that was one of the smallest committees, which was like 250 countries compared to like Spec Poll, which has over 700. So that was a very humbling experience, me being a little committee with my partner. Addie.
And how many total students are in the club?
There were a little over 30, I think. We had, some people who like couldn't come on the trip or were like, couldn't come every week necessarily. And also new members who were kind of learning the ropes. So we had like a little bit over 30, fluctuating between 30 and 35 over the year. And then, yeah, 24 who went.
Pretty cool.
And we're having, tomorrow is our farewell seniors, meeting and our kind of like, get the next gen, in the high school ready for next year. So we have some ninth graders who work on the trip coming to the meeting tomorrow. We're trying to get them like, you know, sort of ready and invested buy-in for next year. So that's.
We're gonna create little
Yeah.
me and
Yeah.
Addie's.
Like the future.
Very cool, very cool. Anybody else?
That's fantastic.
I'm a former college model learner, so I feel the sentiment and by the excitement and well-spokenness, I mean, just so much goes to the advisors, like, thank you all for being here. You can just tell the enthusiasm, you really feel it. My question is, how, you just mentioned about like scouting kind of for that next generation, how do you go about doing that? Do you just like advertise the meeting? Do you like personally go into like social studies classes, like what is your strategy? And maybe like other clubs that are looking for more membership can learn from that.
So last year we did a talk and we brought some of the club members down to the 8th graders and some of them did come up and were part of the club this year as 9th graders. And we're also just using each other to kind of help like bring people in. We think you'd be really great for this and like talking to students who enjoy speaking and, you know, in front of other people and, you know, you can tell who they are, you know, that sort of thing. So it's sort of one-on-one recruiting, but then also recruiting to 8th graders coming up. And then we also have an informational meeting at the beginning of the year. We make announcements, we bring people in, and then we sort of introduce the club that way, and they can kind of figure out if it's for them or, you know, necessarily, but anything else that we've done that I'm missing?
Yeah, so recently I was talking with Ms. Bess and Ms. H and like possibly like Mr. Gilroy and Mr. Whitaker with the middle school teachers here about possibly doing a middle school model UN, because I think from my personal experience and talking to all my other friends who go to schools here in the country and those internationally, we're one of the very few schools who does not have a middle school model UN. Like this is a process. You can't necessarily just walk in unless you're like me and just like, you know, go into the committees and just like win or whatever, which is not the point, but it's a foundation and it takes time because there's no amount of prep that we could do regardless of how long we've been in there to give you that real life experience. So to try and create somewhat of a middle school model UN experience now, so by the time that they get to freshman year, they've already been pros, and there's local ones. They don't necessarily have to go to the one in New York City. There's the one that's at Vassar College, is like fraction of the price. And if we can start them now, just imagine how they're gonna be when they're like a crusty junior, like myself. So, you know, going out. So I think it's really great. So
That's fantastic.
Great. Wonderful suggestion.
Yeah.
Something should be looked into.
Well, once again, hey, the way you guys handle yourselves, the feedback that we get, just, you know, the way you handle yourself in here, so proud of you guys. And every year, and I feel like I say the same thing every year to the Model UN Club, but you guys do a wonderful job. Tremendous. So thank you very much.
give her all the updates.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye, Dana.
Parents, thank you for support.
Yeah.
Good night.
If you meet them.
Oh, you wanna, everybody's
say-
all right if I just individually met everybody?
What you have, is that okay, your business to get to?
We do, but you can change it.
Oh,
tomorrow.
of course you are. Happy to.
Lovely.
Oh, how are you? John, rest of the facilities? Ava, nice to meet you. Congratulations. Great.
To be a part of it. I truly appreciate the experience and opportunity you guys have facilitated for us.
Hi, that's nice to see you, and yes, you like.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. Pretty special.
Welcome to the district. Thank you all for keeping it on line.
Thank you so much.
This has been. I'm so happy to do this.
Mr. Howard, nice to meet you.
Mr. Shapiro, but Mr. Call me. And when did you transfer in from?
From Arlington High School, sir.
Oh, wow.
Good job.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
because their losses are gaining.
This is my first year being here at Millbrook and I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
I'm Chris Lavelle. Nice to meet you, Ava. Thank you for coming and joining our community
Thank you.
in general.
It's very nice to meet you, Jennifer. Kind of get, wait, so you came in at the beginning of this year?
Absolutely.
And she's already wanted to. She's already wanted to.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, and having my co-delegate Kimura. That's in the page. This is truly.
Yeah, it looks like you guys had a good time too.
Chris Rosenberg, pleasure's all mine. Chris Rosenberg, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Eric, Hartswick.
Mr. Perry Hartswick.
No, just Mr. Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you guys for coming in late at night. I'm assuming you have studying to do and
Well, sure.
we're
This
hanging
is
you up.
enjoyable and very informational.
That's great. Very good. Thank you.
And we, Matt, you don't have a fish this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Later.
I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
I forgot. Even if it's like a little summary.
Good night.
All right, now we get back to the boring part of it. And next we have budget review.
Good night.
You too.
Good night.
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 We have to follow that.
Yeah, yeah.
There were a lot of smiles.
That's
It's like extra exciting.
Go ahead. Not now.
Place it does.
Yeah, that, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me just share this with folks at home. So this is our next budget update. Again, we're just trying to keep the board abreast of the changes and the evolution of the budget as we progress through. We've made some, I think, pretty significant changes in a positive direction to the extent possible. Carolyn, you want to just walk into the beginning or?
Sure. So this is our budget timeline. As always, we have many iterations of the process of building the budget before we finally adopt, which will happen at the next board meeting. Though there have been some shifts, I think you'll see that the big story, kind of remains the same in terms of the tripartite budget. The program component is still the largest component of the budget by far, as intended. That is directly student-facing expenses. And we repeat this over and over again, just in case anyone has any confusion about what the three parts of the budget look like and or are comprised of. So that is going to be 76% of the budget that goes directly to salaries and benefits of instructional staff, including teachers and teacher aides. The instructional supplies, materials, any instructional service that's purchased from BOCES, and that could be like the CTI program or the programs that are purchased for students with disabilities. The cost of interscholastics, extracurricular programs, any of the transportation associated with any of the things that I just mentioned. So getting students to and from school, and also anything related to transportation for interscholastics or shuttle runs to BOCES or outside of district programs, anything regarding educating students. Curriculum and instructional planning and development, anything to do with student testing services, library, computer, the counseling services, any of our health services. Remembering that we do bill back for health service contracts, anything provided to students from other districts. Our psychological services are in there, academic intervention and summer instructional programming. So really it's everything to do with students essentially is a part of that program component, and that is the largest portion of our budget, ideally and by design at 76% of our budget. Our administrative component is often associated with administrative salaries, but it also goes to administrative salaries, benefits of any of the school and central administrative personnel and staff, any supplies and materials for school administrators, any central office staff, the Board of Education, which they do not receive salaries, but there are costs associated with the existence of a Board of Education, and that's where that is included. Our payroll services, human resources services, anything to do with benefits for employees, or the provision of benefits for employees, I should say. Our central data processing, our auditing services, legal services, tax services, purchasing, and also our public information services. So this is basically any of the administrative services of the district, including all of those things that I just mentioned. And that we generally want to be the smallest portion of our budget. We aim for it to be right around 10%, and it is. It's just over 10%, 10.45% this year. And also the capital component, there is some confusion with this nomenclature. So I just want to point out that the capital component of the district is the daily expenses associated with district buildings, grounds, maintenance, staff, supplies and materials for custodial and maintenance working, any of the building and ground staff, any bonds associated with capital, any capital lease expenses associated with our facilities, any court judgments, tax certiorari proceedings, any court order claims, utilities and rental costs, and or maintenance improvement costs for the district. This is not capital project expenses. People are very confused about that. The capital component of our annual budget is everything that I just mentioned. It is separate and apart from capital project budgeting. People are confused by that and have asked us if we could change the name of the capital portion of our actual annual budget. We cannot do that. These are the three parts of a budget in a school district. So I just want to publicly explain that that's very different. This accounts for 13.21% of our budget this year. You can see that on a pie chart. One of the things that we're very proud of is that we have maintained in the last 3 years since Mr. Garcia and I have assumed our roles, we've kept our administrative budget to the 3 smallest out of the last 7 years. So we continue to be very mindful of administrative costs and keeping that number as low as we possibly can and putting more money towards our program, which is really where we want it to be. So I will give it back to Elliot to explain some of our projected expenses and then our projected revenues and sort of where we are in terms of planning for next year.
So as we've talked about this previously, this chart represents the categorical descriptions that we are required to report our expenses to the state. So that's why there's numbers on the left side. They're just corresponding to the codes that we have to report these expenses to NYSED at the end of the year. You're going to see, again, just for somebody who hasn't been watching previously or maybe seeing this for the first time, we're showing the current year expenses, the projected expenses for next year, and the difference both in dollars and percentages. Now, as a reminder, some of those line item differences have changed as a result of shifting dollars between budget codes. So some of that might be big numbers, might be a little bit, jarring in the line item, but the most important box on this chart is the lower right-hand corner that shows our general fund budget to budget increase of $910,000 or just about 2.63%. It's worth noting, and you'll see in the footnote at the bottom, that as of April 4th, when we revise these projections, this is showing expense reduction of approximately $285,121. So we were able to, by continuously going back and fine tuning our budget and our projected expenses, we were able to trim the projection by just over $250,000 to try to close that budget gap that we've been referring to in previous presentations. As a complement to the expense budget, we have to look at our revenues, right? We can't spend this money if it doesn't come in. And so on the next chart, you're gonna see the revenue projections organized in very much the same way, except there's an extra column on this chart, and we want to show this very intentionally. This district is over 75% of our revenue comes from the tax levy and the rest comes from the state, but it doesn't always come in as promised. As many of you are paying attention to what's happening in Albany right now, they keep extending their deadline and filing another extension, and this is not news. This happens almost every single year. The budget is due by April 1st. And it feels like every year I'm sitting in front of you at our first April meeting saying it's not finalized yet, but we're hopeful. One of the things that we do want to be mindful of is that our revenues are not fixed, right? Other than the tax levy that we set, that other 27% of revenue is a bit fluid and dynamic. And so some of our estimations have to include cushions for that. So you'll see that in the 24-25 school year, we anticipated revenue of $34,575,000. We actually received revenue, including our year-end projections of about $35.174 million. So that means we came up short about $300,000 in revenue from what we expected when we adopted the budget last year to what we're actually seeing this year. So it's just something to be mindful of. Revenues tend to be estimated sometimes beyond our control, but we try to be as conservative as possible. And again, that center column, the proposed budget, all the way at second to last line, you'll see fund balance appropriation of $1.688 million. Now, that number was 1.74 last year, and we made a commitment to each other and to the board to try to get that number at or below last year, because if you remember from previous presentations, we've shown the trend of how much money we've had to take from one year and put it towards the next year just to balance our budget, given the restrictions we have on taxable revenue and state aid revenue, which is, again, outside of our control. So thankful that we were able to do this. And in the next slides, we'll show you a lot of the work that went into getting us to get these numbers to where they are today. So currently, in order to balance our expense budget projections, we need to allocate $1.68 million, almost 1.69, from this current year's projected fund balance into next year's budget. And again, that is a budget to budget difference of $910,000.
And so this is not changed from previous presentations. It's not a secret. We had to last year hire a new ENL teacher due to a significant spike in that population of students who require very specific programming. So we actually had to add a full-time teacher, and their schedules are full, right? So we've had to maintain that throughout this year, and we will be maintaining that in next year's budget as well. Additionally, we've increased, I guess this is a significant area of increase. This is why it's being highlighted, addition for the replacement of obsolete athletic equipment, and that's mostly related to our track and field program. It's a lot of like the big crash mats that are very pricey and are also directly related to student safety. So it's something that we feel very strongly that needs to, even though it is an addition, it needs to be in our budget projection for next year. Additionally, again, not really any new news here. What we don't want is we don't want an air of panic. So we're being very, very careful not to speak about what, if any, additional positions are going to be reduced until we know absolutely for sure how much state aid we are getting and if this is an absolute must. The personnel assistant is a vacant position. We will not be replacing that. That has been discussed previously in public session. There are 3 retiring and or resigning teachers that we will not be replacing for the 25-26 school year. And there's a potential for additional FTEs to be reduced as well. And again, we are hoping that the governor's budget, everything we are seeing is that we will be getting additional state aid. We just can't count on it until it's out there and it's in, you know, black and white print and we can see it for ourselves. So there could be adjustments yet to come before our next presentation when we actually adopt at next meeting. We've made significant reductions to some budget codes and goods and services, specifically in our area of software subscription reductions. Elliot and Ashley and Dr. Watkins and myself went through the budget with a very fine tooth comb, and we were able to find an extra $285,000. That was in part returning a portion of certain salaries back into federal grants. We had made a commitment, due to the unstable nature of some of the politics that we were hearing about. We felt as though as much as we could move out of federal grants and into our general fund budget in terms of salary, the better positioned we would be in the future. We have done so as taken all of them out of the title grants, the ESSA grants. The only salaries that we've returned a portion of our special education salaries as IDEA monies do not appear to be something that will be impacted by any changes at the federal level. That department has been shifted to be overseen by the Department of Health and Human Services. So we are not anticipating any concern with any of the federal funds directly related to special education. And so it was that and some other programmatic shifts that we were able to make that we were able to save $285,000 from our projections for next year. And also additional staffing reductions, as we had said, may be required due to budgetary constraints. We just don't know for sure what that will look like. And I know the board and the administration has said publicly, we don't want to have to do that, right? That's the last thing we want to have to do. But when the gap is as wide as it is, unfortunately, that's really the only way that we could potentially make that up. And then reallocations within the budget, as I just mentioned, we put $152,000 in salary expenses back from general fund back into those federal funds for special education staff. We established E&L budget codes for program specific expense tracking. That is something that is very important to us to see how much of that particular program is causing direct expenses that we weren't necessarily anticipating until that population almost doubled. We're looking to expense tracking directly related to the capital project, which we actually just in our audit planning meeting had some conversation around what that will look like. And then also we've had to increase building maintenance and repair funding for next year because, as you know, we have buildings that require quite a bit of attention. And so Mr. Mullins has done a great job of reducing costs where he can, but also the fact remains that until these buildings are fixed, we do have to have a budget to support him and his department and keeping them safe and operational for students.
Okay, so these are just putting some numbers to the story, right? We wanted to make those charts kind of make sense, and showing you those charts week after week and expecting you to compare them to each other. We wanted to give you a summary slide of just the big dollar amounts that moved. So of the $910,000 budget to budget increase, these are some of the key figures that drove that cost increase, because we show you the bullets and there's not a lot of activity, so it's not unlikely or not uncommon for somebody to think, well, there's almost $1 million of a budget increase and I saw 6 bullets. So how does that actually play out? So we wanted to give you a summary slide that illustrates where the $910,000 come from. So $233,000 of that, or 25, just about a quarter of that money is contractually obligated by salary and benefits. This is the net amount offset by a reduction of $285,000. So that was over a $500,000 number that was shaved down to a net impact of $233,000 of increased expenses. An additional $124,000 or 13% of that increase is due to the increased cost of facilities and operations. I want to say a large portion of that beyond what Carolyn referenced in terms of like the money we put aside to maintain the building. A big chunk of that money is also in the trend of our utility expenses also going up. So we have a fuel oil budget, we have an electrical budget, we have a propane budget, and all of those expenses are projected to increase as well. So we have the cost of materials going up, the cost of utilities going up, and we have an increased allocation to the labor to support the work that's just ongoing and continuous. In total, our overall salary related expenses were reduced by $54,000 and BOCES related expenses were reduced by $290,000. So that's on the expense side. Then we wanted to speak to the revenue side and how it balances. And so in tandem with those reductions on the expenses or those justifications to expense increases, we have experienced a decrease of overall state aid projection of $39,000. And as a reminder, that's irrespective of some of the inflated numbers that we see on our state aid runs, at least on the initial ones. And one of the biggest examples of that is our pre-K aid is listed at our maximum aidable allocation, and it's due to enrollment. Our current enrollment projections are going to come up significantly short of that number. So that number is going to be roughly $120,000 less based on current enrollment projections for next year's pre-K cohort. So that would be in addition to the $39,000 that we're not seeing, despite an increase of foundation aid of $57,000. Our actual, and just as a footnote here, so if you remember when I showed you that middle column on the revenue side of how the revenues do shift and sometimes reduce from the adopted budget to the actual fiscal year, in the current fiscal year, we're just highlighting that we did experience a reduction in anticipated revenue of just under $250,000. So all of these numbers play major factors in our budget planning process. As we say, there's roughly 70 to 80% of our budget is locked in by contracts and rates we can't control. This is just an illustration of some of what we can control and some of what we can't control and how it's affected our overall bottom line. So once again, we just want to touch on the contingency budget. It has not changed significantly, but we do recalculate it because, as you noticed, there's been a minor shift in the admin and program ratios as we remove salaries from the general fund in the program section where Caroline referenced, we took the salaries of certain educators and percentage portions of it and put it into IDEA grants. That shrinks the program piece, which does modify the ratio of program to admin expenses. And so when we're calculating a contingency budget, we have to continuously recalculate that ratio to make sure that we're compliant with the OSC's regulations. And so we did that. We did the calculations. We reran the numbers. We're still facing a revenue reduction of $707,000 should we have to go to contingent budget. And again, for those watching at home that may not be familiar with this process, it's pretty simple. The voters authorized a tax levy for the 24-25 school year. We're going to ask them to authorize a tax levy in May for the 25-26 school year. If they don't support the proposed budget, we have to operate under the previously approved tax levy, which would be the current year's levy revenue, which is $707,000 less than what we're expecting it to be next year, or we're anticipating it to be next year. And so in order to do that, there's a number of items that have to come out of the budget immediately. All salary increases for non-contractual staff members are removed. All equipment purchases are removed, so we're not buying any heavy equipment, any vehicles, any instructional equipment, major computer components, things like that, all comes out of the budget. It streamlines it to just what they consider ordinary contingent expenses. So when we take out what we have to take out, then we go back and we look at the things that we'd really rather not take out of the budget. But again, as we've said in many different versions of this story, we try to keep the cuts away from kids and out of classrooms to the extent possible. So we start looking at those other support functions and maybe secondary and tertiary functions, because everything we do is for kids, but we want to keep the immediately student-facing expenses as whole as possible. And so we went back and we identified an additional $215,000 of reductions to give us almost a $500,000 reduction. That being said, we found $490,000 that we would not want to take out of the budget, but could live without for a year if we had to. And we still would have to find another $217,000 of cuts to balance our revenues and expenses in a contingency budget. And so again, as Caroline said, we're not trying to make anybody scared. We don't want to incite panic. We're not going to even talk about what those might be unless we absolutely have to make that consideration. But in full disclosure to the Board of Education, if we need to go to contingency budget, this is what it would look like in a very abbreviated sense. So in closing, we just want to show the taxpayers at home and the board here what this budget at a glance looks like. We're going from a $34,575,075 budget to a proposed budget of $35,485,399, an budget increase of $910,324 or 2.63%. The levy itself would be going up $707,900. It's the number we just referenced in the contingency planning. or a levy to levy difference of 2.61. And in the years that, Caroline and I have been overseeing this process, that is the closest those two numbers have ever been. So we're really just want to be fully transparent. We're doing everything we can to keep this budget in control and viable. But there's not a whole lot changing to it because we just can't afford it. That's where we are. Any questions? So in the hopes that the state aid picture gets clarified in the next 14 days, we are hoping to come back to the board with a better revenue picture that would show further reduction to our required fund balance appropriation from the current year to the next year, and hoping that that also would contain the messaging that we don't have to reduce all three or hopefully any of those positions, but we won't know that until our revenue picture is clarified.
Very good. Question? Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next is the second reading of 5100 policy. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Also.
Questions, comments, updates? All in favor? Any against? Second reading of 6670. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second, questions, comments, anything? All in favor? Any against? All right, for new business? Oh, yeah, new business. Do I have a motion to accept the donation from the MEF?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
Thank you so much.
What are
Infant token?
I'm sorry.
They are, and you have anything to add, Caroline, please do so, but they are STEAM kits. So a company named Infento, but the grant was proposed by the STEAM teachers. And there are various kits, so the students can actually build different items, and they can be reused from class to class and year to year. So this will be sustainable for, years to come. All of third, fourth, and fifth grade. That's one. Anything else I'm missing? No? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Next is the first reading of 0110 with a request to forego the second reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just real quick, why the request to?
So this is one of the things that has changed quite a few times in the past few years is the Title IX law, or the law that's associated with Title IX. And so this is just kind of going back to the future, because there were laws in place in August that are no longer in place as of November. And so everything that we did in August to update the law under the previous administration has to be undone. And so this is us literally going back to the previously standing. I feel like all we've done is update our Title IX policies.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? Any against? All right. Next is the President, Vice President's reports. I wanted to, the only thing I really had was, and I think we'll talk more, especially if there's specific questions about it. There's been a request by one of the one of other districts to, have superintendents, board of eds write letters, basically asking for violent threat crime to be considered bail-based, if I'm saying any of that right. There was an incident where, I believe it was a mother came to the school, threatened to do all kinds of horrible stuff. She was arrested, she was taken away. Basically, they released her on her own recognizance. She was back in the school that afternoon saying the same stuff. And they're trying to push a bill through to make those crimes available so that you can't just, walk out.
To let the judge decide bail eligible, meaning if
There you
the
go.
judge deems bail is necessary or not. Yeah.
Yeah, so, we can,
Yeah, so essentially what Harry's right about what happened. This was, quite a bit ago now, several weeks actually. And so this parent continues to harass staff, show up on school grounds despite a number of arrests, despite a number of serious violent threats against the
but to
school.
be clear, not here.
No, not here, not here, not here. It's another
Yeah.
district, not even this county. And so this is really a request from, not even a neighboring superintendent, but basically saying that with the bail situation being the way it is right now, only having certain crimes be eligible, bail eligible. This is not one of them, and actually there's been a movement in New York State to reduce the level of some of these types of threats from felony charges to misdemeanor charges, so there's a real concern that is being seen and really being lived by some people and somewhat traumatically. And so there is a request for superintendent organizations and also Board of Education to really petition legislative action at this point to protect schools against violent threats and actors.
Yeah, and the, whatever you want to call it, the best request is to have it come from Dutchess County School Board Association. That way it's all of us going. But, that'll take a while to get that done. So, I would like to, put together that letter. We actually have a template for it. Put together that letter and sign it for this board. Unless somebody has a problem with that. I should- All right, really, that's all I had. I did get a call, kind of interesting. There's a county legislator, and I don't know, can't remember the name, that wants to, I shouldn't say that, they're candidate for county legislator, but wants to understand what are the issues with the state and the county. School boards, school districts, things like, in my mind, things like these unfunded mandates and so I had agreed to meet with that person, the candidate, but haven't done so yet, so I'll let you know once
Candidate and represent this district.
they would like to, yeah.
Okay.
They would like to. That's all I had. Do you have any?
No.
Okay. All right,
So
Carolyn?
that's me. So I have a long report, but in the interest of time, I'm just gonna highlight a few things. Today we have a really awesome training from Lisa Hamill, who has been a partner with the district, working on lots of different things related to special education and student services. I'm sure Amy and Alex might talk a little more about it. Awesome concert for Music in Our Schools Month with a really big, strong band presence this year. Also, in the last couple of weeks, we have welcomed our new National Honor Society and National Junior and Honor Society inductees. So congratulations to all of those students. It was 23 students in total between the two programs. So congratulations to the middle school and high school students and their families. A lot of really exciting things going on. We've also had some really awesome opportunities for our students in the past week even, where they were able to attend the Rockland County Construction Career Fair field trip and also the sheet metal field trip. These students were high school students, and that was arranged by, Samantha Lynch, who's been doing a great job of having opportunities for our kiddos to really explore careers, and working with the school counselors to do so. I want to congratulate our Blue Ribbon Blazer for the month of April, Miss Allie Ellis. She is a new teacher to the district this year. She's part of our E&L department, and she was nominated by a colleague. So ironically, the administration was having conversations about their nominations for Blue Ribbon Blazer. And right after that meeting, I received an email from a colleague recommending Allie, saying that Alden is focusing on being courageous for the month of April, and that they feel that as a new teacher, that Allie is very courageous, that she's taken on so much to in her first year. She's taken over spearheading the Sparrow's Nest fundraiser for the district, that she's brought some new programming or been a part of the E&L department bringing new programming here. And she's working really hard in and outside of the classroom to support her students. So that was a recommendation that was made by a colleague and absolutely supported by the administration. So congratulations to Allie Ellis. And then I just wanted to highlight one more thing, which is on Thursday, and I said this before, the E&L department is hosting their World Cup soccer night. It is going to be so exciting. We have over 100 people signed up. So this has totally like taken on steam. It's awesome. We're so excited about it, and I know the department is so excited about the inclusivity of it, because in the past, E&L programming has not been well attended by members of the community. So we're so excited that people are coming and that they're participating and that they're showing that community spirit to those families. There's some highlighted upcoming events. And I did want to correct where Green Day is May 15th, not 16th. I got two conflicting emails. It is the 15th. So Wear Green for mental health awareness is going to be on May 15th. So I will update that in my upcoming board presentations. And I also want to just give a brief update to the Board of Education regarding the middle school gym and tunnels. So on, I believe it was April 2nd, there was a report given to me by Al Hamill that a parent had picked up their child from practice and had concern about the smell of mold in the middle school gymnasium. That was all I needed to hear to contact Mr. Mullins, and immediately set a ball rolling. Brian Calandria, who is the Health and Safety and Risk Coordinator for Dutchess County BOCES, was here that same day, taking samples, correct me if I'm wrong, but swab samples, probe samples, and indoor air quality samples from the middle school gymnasium. And so those were processed, and those results were returned, I would say 3 or 4 days later, and have already been shared with Board of Education. Those results were fine. Upon deeper inspection, Mr. Garcia and I, actually with this concerned parent, were able to identify some surface staining that appeared to potentially be a substance that could be mold. And so we had Brian Calandria come back from Dutchess County BOCES and do more in-depth testing. We received those results, I believe, this morning. Yeah, this morning. And so I shared them with the Board of Education and a summary of that with the community as well. In the midst of all of this, we additionally received a concern of the smell of mold coming from the mechanical tunnels under the middle school. And so, that was part of Brian's second trip out here, was to do an inspection of the tunnels and also collect samples from there. Those reports have been shared with the Board of Education, and a summary of that as well did go out to the community. The biggest findings, from that report was that we were, strongly recommended to discard any of the old furniture and or storage materials that were being kept in these tunnels. So we did bring in a dumpster, and we did itemize a list of those district materials that were discarded. What I would say is I'm not really sure why these things have been kept for as long as they have. To be quite honest with you, I don't actually know. Some of this was in disrepair, so it just seems to me it probably could have been discarded long ago. And so we have done that. John's maintenance and custodial crew has worked tirelessly to get all of that out of the tunnels. So I do appreciate their help with that. And so all of those results, we have followed all of the recommendations. There is nothing right now that shows concern or any need for closing any of these spaces. And so out of an abundance of caution, and truly that is what it is at this point, I know that people are very nervous and I completely understand that. We have brought in an environmental hygienist from an independent firm. And so they have done additional testing throughout the middle school building. So they have done additional aerosol testing in the gymnasium. They've done testing on the opposite end of the third floor. They've done testing at on this floor in a room where there have been concerns or of smells of mold, and we've had tested before and there's been no mold presence. We had additional testing here. We had 2 spaces on the third floor. On the first floor, and then we had 1 control cell outside. So we have 6 locations that collections were made, and those have been sent out to a lab, and we are not anticipating those results until next Monday, which will be over spring break. We will provide the community with an update of those results. I think there's anything necessary that requires, any sort of action in terms of closing a space or moving classes or anything like that, we will have, more of an opportunity for a dialogue with the community. But we just don't have any information right now that suggests that that is something that we need to do. The one thing I did say is that until those results are back, we are going to minimize unnecessary use of these spaces, right? So practices that don't need to be in the gymnasium, we won't have them in the gymnasium. If the weather is nice, classes can go outside. That is out of an abundance of caution until we have this more thorough testing. There is nothing currently that says that we must do that.
Question? Next, we have the man of the hour.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just be brief to you, Joel, and the floor. I just want to start off by thanking our entire facility staff for getting us through this winter, the snow, the ice, the rain, roof leaks, heating issues. We had no major disruptions to class learning. We got the kids in the building safely, we got the teachers in safely. Couple little adjustments in a couple classrooms here, we no school to roof leaks, but we adapted to it, and hopefully the worst is over for now. Snow and the ice, that's where we really got the major roof leaks. We had a lot of rain lately. The guys are diligent. They're always going around checking for roof leaks. So I just want to send a great thanks out to all of the guys for the work. In the high school, we replaced a 20 horsepower motor, 24 filters in the air handler that supports the auditorium. Hopefully we have graduation there again, hopefully not, but we replaced the 20 horsepower motor, which is a tremendous motor. The guys did it themselves. That's something that would be serviced out. It's a high voltage. So the guys learned how to lock out, tag out, or we can shut down the power, and then we can touch it while the guys are working on it. And They did an amazing job, and our motor's kicking, so. We're gonna be starting to chillers pretty soon to test them. The guys come out to look at them already, and hopefully if we have graduation, not hopefully, but if we have it in the auditorium, it'll be foolish this year, sorry, last year. And then the last thing we'll say is that in the middle school, we created a plan for the removal of bleachers during the spring break if necessary. So we looked at them, we can take them out ourselves, we don't need to get out.
And so that's related to the initial reports of minor fungal growth. And so we'll wait for the additional testing and see what, that shows. If there is any fungal growth there, that would be one of the steps of remediation that we've spoken about. Fully understanding that, you know, there are some conditions that if they worsen, that could potentially exacerbate the issue. But it's really, you know, as we've been saying over and over again, we have to fix the source of the issue, which we believe to be those lock windows, the roof, and those kinds of things. So we have many plans for how we can update the interior of the gym, and make it safer and better and all of those things, but it doesn't make sense to put new pads and new bleachers and anything until we have the source of the water intrusion remediated, or we're just going to be in this same spot a few years from now.
Anybody have any questions before?
I was gonna send you a picture today. I walked by home. Steam was pouring out of that pipe today, and it was like,
I know.
I should take a little video and send it to Jim.
We gotta get it. We did, Alden steam traps last year, so we're on a schedule to do them every 2 years.
Okay.
So we get 1 or 2 bad steam traps. That's why we're gonna steam again, so we gotta get back in the tunnel and we gotta replace the steam trap. So Elmer's up for this, season, this summer. We'll get down and change the traps.
Any questions for John?
Okay.
Thanks. Let's see. Somebody.
Yep, so, just some updates to professional development, as I had articulated, at the previous Board of Ed meeting that I came to on our 3/14 Superintendent's Conference Day, so our last Superintendent's Conference Day of the year. I was working on getting a CPR first aid AED training set up. We were able to successfully have 12 other members of our staff trained that day. That is the maximum number that, within, you know, the scope of our day, we can have trained by 1 trainer. There were 6 people that were trained in the morning session and then the 6 additional trained in the afternoon. These staff members included aides, TAs, monitors, and then, Jessica Wilcox, our food services director. On this past Thursday, April 3rd, Jennifer Overzak, our school psychologist here at Millbrook Middle School, and I attended a conference held at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES to learn more about connecting individuals with disabilities to adult services. It was very informative. We kind of got a lot of information about what some of these other, you know, programs and services we could connect our students with disabilities to post-graduation. And then as Carolyn had already mentioned earlier today, Lisa Hamel was back in district providing professional development to staff at both Elm Drive and Alden Place, in effectively managing student behavior. The session was very well received by our staff. Both myself, Dr. Watkins, Mrs. O'Connell, all sat in on this training as well, and, you know, feel there are a lot of really great things that we can implement with our staff moving forward the remainder of this year, and then again in the future next year as well. In just people personnel services in general, we have held our annual review meetings for our students at this point in the year at Millbrook Middle School, High School, and Alden Place. We have started this month at the beginning of April, holding our meetings at Elm Drive, and will continue these throughout the end of the month. Additionally, meetings have been held for our students that are parentally placed at private schools, being Dutchess Day and Upton Lake. Our students at Cardinal Keys, and our students receiving services at out of district placements. We're continuing to plan for our CPSE preschool meetings as well. And then the last point that I just wanted to talk about is last week I participated in an informational call with Urgent Care. So I know that at a previous board meeting, Harry, you had asked about the clinic over in Woodchuck, and you've done, between myself, Dr. Watkins, Mr. Garcia, and, Ms. Hernandez, we have done some looking into that, right, getting of a medical clinic here. And so this call that I was able to participate in is with Urgent Care through Albany, medical health system, which brings school-based virtual visits directly to school nurses' offices. Part of their mission is to allow students to be evaluated and treated in school by a medical provider with that supervision of the school nurse. Hopefully decreasing the need to be sent home for, minor ailments or illnesses. With the equipment that they provide, which does come at no cost to the district. We would be able to treat a variety of illnesses, including cold and flu, ear and throat infections, viruses, and, some other things like that. The way the program works is that medication and testing kits are distributed to the nurses' offices at the school buildings. And then they're for, assessment and treatment purposes. And then there is, they deploy based on how many you request, these machines through TitoCare, it's called. And they were able to kind of give me a little demo on, our virtual call where it is a machine setup. There is like a tablet, associated with it to account for that virtual visit, as along with like a little device machine that then adapts to multiple things. So it's a square little device. It starts off, you can place it on a student's forehead and it reads their temperature. And then there are a variety of attachments that then allow for other aspects of monitoring. So there are attachments that then make it a tongue depressor with a camera. So you can look in the back of a student's throat to kind of check to see if strep throat could be a potential, illness that they are facing. Then you can take that off. There are additional attachments to check in students' ears to see if they have an ear infection. Again, additional attachments for heart rate and blood pressure monitoring and different things like that. So essentially it's this little machine that allows you to kind of have a very comprehensive visit like you would going to your primary care doctor or an urgent care. They have all the appropriate consent forms that would be needed in order for this to occur. If we were to move forward with a plan like this, we would then at, a district level, talk about, how and when we would send that out, and market that information to our families. And so in speaking through this, they were explaining that a big part of their mission is really to minimize the amount of students that we're sending home, due to a potential illness. And from the work they've already done, this is like a very early on, pilot program. They have 89% of students that they're able to send back to class after like the culmination of this visit. And right, like this is the piece I think that we are seeing, right? A student come down, they are saying they're not feeling well, they're saying their throat hurts. There's only so much within our nurses' offices that we can do and, look for without then calling a parent and saying, they're really complaining that their throat really hurts. Maybe you should take them to the doctor to go get tested for strep, right? With this machine and these materials, they send us again, testing kits for COVID, flu A and B, and strep. So these are things that can occur right in the nurse's office with that oversight of the provider, again, be it a doctor, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, that is there through that virtual visit. They had explained that, with consent, with a student that comes down that has already, their parent has already consented to this, from the time the nurse picks up the phone and speaks to the parent and says, hey, your child is down here in the nurse's office. Would you like me to set up a telehealth appointment? The parent says yes. It's about a 5-minute, max 10-minute turnaround until they're connected with a provider. They also deploy some, over-the-counter type medication to the nurse's offices as well, including acetaminophen, ibuprofen, Claritin, Zyrtec, things like that. So that, again, at the discretion of that provider, that can be administered to the student right then and there. And they can also call in a prescription if necessary to the, your preferred pharmacy, right? If there is any additional follow-up that would be needed, they can connect you to some of their partner urgent cares, in the surrounding area. Additionally, if anyone, if a child has gone down and their parent has not already consented, again, the nurse can make that phone call and say, we do have this program, not sure if you're aware of this information, would you like to consent to this? They would then be connected with somebody from the Albany Med Center. And they said that turnaround from connecting with them to a medical practitioner being on a virtual visit is only about 10 to 15 minutes. So it's not too long of a turnaround for, again, that to happen. And it's something where, again, I just went on this informational call last week. I'm working to set up one with our nurses involved now so that they can ask some more of those more medically based questions. But again, in working with Dr. Watkins and Mr. Garcia and Ms. Hernandez, we're looking to just get as much information as possible and see if this is something that we would want to bring here.
If I understand it correctly, the district has the option for the control over, we could just have it for our students that are in
Yes.
class. We could expand that to students and siblings. We could expand that to students, siblings, anybody else in New York State that wants to come. I mean,
Yeah, so when I was on the call and asking them, that was kind of the sibling question was kind of what prompted me to get more of this information. So I had asked, if we have a student, obviously this is accessible to all of our students that are here in our buildings, right? I was like, what if somebody has, a 3-year-old sister and mom can't get them a doctor's appointment? Is this something that as a sibling of one of our students, they could access? And they, their response was, well, anyone that lives in New York State can access this, right? So we can do this for your employees. Again, that would be your decision as a Board of Education, but we could open it up to community members. I think, that would be something we would want to strategically think about the when and how we would do that. But again, I think we have a lot of options of how to think about, bringing this to definitely, hopefully, our students, and then our,
Who pays
larger.
the provider?
Hmm?
Who pays the provider?
Insurance,
Their insurance.
their insurance.
Individual insurance, what if, as part of their forms, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, as part of their forms, that's all included.
Okay.
They
Thank you.
have, financial assistance for families that, either don't have insurance or appropriate coverage or things of that
Right.
nature. And they had articulated that none of that insurance check kind of falls on us as a school district. So again, if you have a student that goes in, regardless of what their insurance status is, they're not going to be refused to be seen. They are gonna handle that behind the scenes with the parent.
As any ER room.
Yep,
Right, saying that
right.
nobody gets refused.
Yeah, exactly. So there would be no refusal of care or anything like that.
Understood.
That would be handled, outside of the.
Okay.
school.
I mean, I know Weebatuck has
Has a
sort of a
clinic.
bigger thing. They
Yeah.
actually have a clinic there
Yeah.
that you can go into. And the people that I've spoken to at Weebatuck love it. They think it's really helped out a lot. The liability scares the Jesus out of me, who's liable for what and when it happens and does it overload our nurses to the point where they can't handle, other kids, or they have like bunk rooms that we're setting up to put kids in. But it's good to get, I think, as much background as we can.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in my opinion, that's.
Well, I think some of the visits to the nurse's office sometimes are behavioral too, right? So I think that if students figure out that if I go to the nurse's office and they call my mom and my mom says, yep, go ahead, let them see the doctor and there's nothing wrong with me, I'm gonna go back to class, it might very well cut down on the number of kiddos who are going to the nurse just because it's an avoidance behavior. One of the things that I was kind of impressed by is that there's no cost associated with this. And that essentially the device that Alex was talking about, they'll loan us this device so long as we can guarantee 40 office visits per device, right? So if we wanted one in each of our schools, we would essentially need to have 160 office visits throughout the school year. Which 160 sounds like a lot, but you think like cold, flu, stomach bugs.
For the
season.
year?
A hundred, yeah, so it's like
That's
40
like
per
every
year.
building.
Yeah,
Right?
40 per year
Yeah.
per device that's deployed.
Yeah.
So again, 160 total per year. And again, like we have talked about, like, I mean, I think we could maybe, meet that. Carolyn and I were kind of saying
Well,
that.
then we have to have logs, right? Wouldn't that be?
No, we do.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm working on setting up that and did that follow-up call with our
Right.
school nurses, so we can kind of work on, that follow-up information there.
I mean, I feel like Elm Drive in Walden is probably
Yeah.
like.
Oh, right
easy.
there.
We could do that by like November.
Yeah.
But some of the older kids, they're more of the like,
Even up here.
they either stay home or they just,
Infect everybody.
yeah, or they go down to the nurse and it's more of like, can I just call my mom? I don't feel good kind of thing. So I feel like it's a really great opportunity. I did reach out to Shaw Carlson because, we asked for other districts in the area, and it's somebody that Shaw represents, so. I'm trying to do a background check on like the contract, have they reviewed the contract yet, et cetera. So that if this is something we wanted to pursue, it would streamline the process, so. They've reached out for a couple of questions for us, sort of like, what is our intention? How many buildings do we think we would want to serve? And then once we get that contract, we would be able to have it fully reviewed by Shaw Carlson, but essentially the question this evening is this something that the Board of Education thinks has merit to, continue to explore?
Now, you'd be able to, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I mean, if you think the high school, you could just have it in 3 schools versus
that's
4.
So,
And have high school come to the middle
Can you
school
move
if you
the
want.
device
Yeah.
from one?
Oh.
yes, so we can, kind of really hone in on, Chris, like you were saying, looking at those previous logs. And thinking about volume of, each nurse's office. We can say to them, hey, we only want 2 machines deployed to us, and they are mobile and easily transportable. So we can, again, determine and decide, like, do we want one housed at Elm Drive and then one housed at one of these 3 buildings here? Because the transportation of the device itself is very easy on this one campus of 3 buildings, or even if necessary, like the movement of children, right? Like our high school and middle schoolers are between this building all the time anyway. So really thinking about what that looks like. So, we have a couple different options that we really can look at.
The only thing that we were concerned about is that the medication can only be
Yeah.
dispensed from one location. So if, say, we had one device on this campus, it would be a scenario where, say it was at Alden Place, if it was a secondary student, they would actually have to be brought to Alden Place to receive any medication that came from it. So that would be like a Claritin or like an ibuprofen. But if it was a prescription, the prescription would be called in to wherever they identify, the parent identifies. So, more to explore, like as we get clear numbers,
I say as a parent, the time that you have to go when you get that phone call from your child being in the nurse's office to getting them to a provider is in no way anywhere near what you were saying, like,
Right.
it would save,
And those are the
Days.
questions like I feel like I asked on this call as a parent. I was like, my kid's daycare could have this, that would just like
That
cut
stood out to me
down,
a lot.
completely. Like I could essentially be at work, right? And pick up their prescription on the way to get them if I'm
Yeah.
using the pharmacy, right? And then just go home and we're good to go. So I do think it is something that, especially like a lot of our working families would really appreciate.
Yeah, getting them
Well,
to a
does
doctor.
anybody have a problem with us and, continuing to investigate it? I mean,
No.
once we set up, there's so many options that we would have to specify, but, maybe.
I'm sure like the contracts or whatever, it's gotta absolve us from any sort of liability type thing. I'm sure that's gonna be in the wording, but
Right, and so all of that lies with all of the main med, like that was the whole
Yeah.
thing, it's that it's their provider, it's their, you know, they're doing the insurance, they're doing all of this, and so. It makes it very attractive because part of like what Perry's saying, Weaver Tech has a very expansive program and it's awesome, right? It would be super convenient for the community, but it also requires certain specifications in terms of like, the space within the building. There's startup costs that are associated with it. So there's a lot of other things, but if this could serve the same telehealth visit purpose, for our families, because in reality, right, if you're a parent who has a secondary student and you've consented, you don't even need to come here. Like there's actually no, you know what I mean? They're gonna be with a school nurse that they feel comfortable with because it's somebody in the building that they know. You know, they're gonna have a device essentially looking in their throat or whatever the case may be. And it really allows the parent to just say, like, I'll come if you need me, but you know, first, let's see if you need me.
And also the testing component of it too.
Yeah.
Just if you find as a parent, oh, my child is, you know, positive for XYZ. I mean, that actually helps with the health and safety of our entire building, because if you actually have a positive test, now you're more likely to keep your kid home versus, oh, your throat hurts, so you'll be fine in a few days.
Right.
The kid's walking around with strep for a week and spreading it, right? Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
Maybe, or are they interested in coming to the wellness fair? Is that something that you want to see, like the device and like kind of have that open to families if we come to the wellness fair or something like that? I
Like
could
we
definitely
can
ask the question,
It
yeah.
might be short notice.
Yeah.
for this.
But I can ask, yeah, absolutely.
Alright, so we'll wait to hear more.
Explore. I
All
do
right.
have one other question though. Going back to, the superintendent conference day with the CPR, first aid and AED.
Yes,
Was it American Red Cross? Was it Heart Saver or who, what kind of?
heart saver.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right,
Okay, so I don't want to take any more time. We've had a great informal, informational evening, but one thing I did want to shout out is particularly the virtual college fairs. We were fortunate today at the high school to have a college and career fair where our students were able to spend time for various periods in the gymnasium to visit and have conversations with various colleges. But for those parents that would be interested in learning a little bit more, because I feel that that's the link that we always try to make is for our parents and their children to have those conversations. The virtual tour is available free. You can register. The link is in my memo. So for those at home, you could go online and look at my memo, but that's there and you and your child could check out some of the virtual links. There's no cost to do that. In addition, tonight, competing with this board meeting, so hopefully that didn't impede the attendance, but we did have the internet safety program again, offered through PNW BOCES. So I hope that that was well attended. And as we've already heard, we have ENL soccer night, which we're excited about. There's the wellness fair, you'll hear about it again, but it is the 28th, and we'll look into the suggestion that Dina made. But we do have Sound Bath by Metaphysically Willow Dana, who will be offering that. And we are also incorporating this into our department meeting on that same day. So really providing an outlet for our staff to practice some of these wellness activities as well as time to learn from the vendors. And I just always highlight the consultants who have been in our district. So Angela was in Holden Place recently, specifically working with third and fourth grade, looking at the manipulatives that they, and I think she was with it, their manipulatives and how they're supporting the students now. So this is year 2 of Eureka Squared. I'm looking at those kits that they were provided and are there any different needs that they have based on what they're noticing with the students' performance on each of the tasks. tomorrow, Shelley Klein, this isn't in my report, but tomorrow Shelley Klein is gonna be there. She was gonna be here today, but we moved the day because of the training that was provided by Lisa Hamill. And a big shout out to the 5th grade who worked with Miss Lattenville, who had experience with the cloud and bottle investigation, and her students have to complete that prior to state testing. That is a requirement, and it was showcased in our newsletter that goes home weekly in email of how the students performed on that cloud in the bottle investigation, creating a cloud and water bottle. And congratulations to our 8th graders who had a successful trip to Washington DC. I know that Mr. Gilroy has put some pictures together, and a thank you to myself, Ms. Hernandez, and MEF. That'll be sending out soon, but our students had smiles on their faces and were well prepared thanks to the hard work of Mr. Gilroy. So shout out to them. And this evening, congratulations to Mr. Andrew Cedarmark, who was appointed this evening as the next principal of Alden Place. So we'll be making arrangements for opportunities for everyone to get to know him. His start date is June 1st. So he will have opportunity before the end of the year to spend time just getting to know families and students and staff before lifting up the work that we have in front of us. So congratulations to him. And I just wanted to thank the board. During consent agenda, you formally approved the continuing education program. That was not in my report, but I just wanted to thank you this evening for doing so and be on the lookout for more information on that. Our next step is to be recruiting various teachers and staff members in our district who are interested in willing and offering programs to our community for continuing education. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
Questions?
I did want to ask you about that and commend you because that's
So excited.
amazing.
We've been working on this for 3 years.
Yes.
I'm sure, but we
It's
have
been a big-
so much
big one.
talent
So much.
in our community. I'm sure details will be forthcoming, but do you expect this to be year round? So summer
Yeah. I'm
Summer
hoping that we can put
programming
something together,
for-
maybe smaller for the
for
summer.
children as well, yeah, because I know Arlington has a very popular program for children up through 7th grade for summer, but I mean, Millbrook, you can compete with that.
I agree.
Keep everybody here, and then would that be revenue for our district? That would, okay,
That's the goal.
yes,
Yeah, it might take a little bit to get to the point
Sure,
where we're
sure.
making money, but
that's okay.
yeah, I mean,
No,
that
it's
is
fantastic.
the reason we looked into it.
Yes.
Is so that we can tap talent here. Obviously, we would be paying the instructors, but
Yeah,
then after that,
Yeah.
it could potentially be a revenue source.
that's fantastic.
Very
Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
excited.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, future agenda items, you guys know. Public comment?
Nothing.
No.
No.
Okay. Next is a proposed executive session. Before I do that, I want to make sure everybody knows that just because we go to executive session and everything goes dark for a little bit, when we come back, we may still have actions to take. The meeting is not over. So just keep that in mind. With that, do I have a motion to go to executive session?
Someone.
Second,
1 second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any against? About 5 minutes. Very good.